Whatever kind or genre of film you like, chances are Peter Yates has directed it. It is staggering. Let's explore some parameters here. Friends of Eddie Coyle, a sadly underrated, I think, and neglected picture. Krull, again, I think an underrated science fiction picture. Honored films, of course, like Breaking Away. And now with The New Suspect, where is the real Peter Yates? Will he stand up or something? What's behind door number 3 here? What's the inner consistency, if there is one, in your work, do you think?
I don't know. I think probably it's an inquisitiveness of trying to find different forms and different ways of making films. Of course, it's much easier for me. I mean, much easier, but much more interesting for me. And I think I'm very lucky to be allowed to make different stories. I mean, so many directors, I think, and the danger that one has to watch out for is that you become known for one kind of picture, because then people just send you those scripts. And
well, some directors can't really go beyond one thing. Some might have a sense of adventure, say in Krull, but could they do an Eleni, where there's a whole different kind of passion behind the picture? You see what I'm saying? I mean, you are able to do all that. It's rather bewildering for those of us that take our directors seriously, you know.
I wonder, maybe it's something to do with one's English background or training. Maybe having been trained in the theatre, one is used to. You see, we used to, the training one used to get in the theatre would be to work for companies where you did a different play every week, and you were taught and learning the whole time to be versatile. Maybe it's that versatility that one learns. Or maybe it is purely that one's thinking in terms of how to present something to an audience that makes it possible to tackle different stories and different films.
Also, you're implying, I think, that a film director needs to know so much more than just films. I know you've said this is a bit of a danger for some young directors who have seen only movies. They then copy those movies.
Yeah,
is that a problem, do you think, in today's scene?
Yes, I think it is. I mean, I would love to have that knowledge of film, I think, but I would be terrified. Luckily, I've got such a rotten memory that I'd probably just enjoy it and forget what I'd liked so much. But I remember that when I was starting, which is the time sort of the Antonioni pictures and the Truffaut films, and this, you know, and all the young directors were saying, "Oh, I've got to do that great tracking shot here, 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 and here." Well, if you just shove a tracking shot in for the sake of a tracking shot, you're going to probably finish cutting it out,
right?
Because it won't fit. It's got to come from the film itself. You know?
Well, was there ever a time like that in your career when you wanted to go out and spray paint the trees and the grass like Antonioni would do?
Yes, yes, yes. So I went out and made commercials.
Well, that's a good place to do that.
Well, exactly, of course it is. You can get it all out of your system. I mean, that was what was good at that time, was that you could, they would let feature directors make commercials. This is in England. I mean, everyone, John Schlesinger was making commercials, and Carol Rice was making commercials. Everyone made commercials. I had a whole house furnished and paid for by commercials.
We tend to think of all these illustrious gentlemen as artistes, men of culture, but we tend to forget that in this business you've got to be able to sell a product and to meet a deadline. In fact, I understand you're pretty good at bringing in projects under budget.
Well, what I feel is that one has to be honest at the beginning. I would rather be a hero at the end than a hero at the beginning. I mean, people are always trying to make you agree to the fact that you can make a film for much less, because they don't want to present to their boards the figures that they've got written in front of them. I think they're much better off to be upfront and say, look, that is what it's going to cost you. And if they don't like it, well, then don't make the film. I think what is dishonest is to say, oh, of course we can make it for that, and then maybe add millions to the budget afterwards when people are trapped and they can't go elsewhere.
Share with us, if you will, this practical sense now as it comes to bear upon Suspect. Courtroom drama, a large part of it, relatively static setups. Close-ups is maybe the most dramatic thing you can do in the middle of it all. Practically speaking, is it intimidating to take on a project like that? Movies are supposed to move, you know.
Well, this is really why the camera, I don't think, hardly comes to rest at all. during Suspect, because the situations could be very static if you weren't careful. And I think also what it does is it puts an enormous pressure both onto the leading actors, both onto Cher and Dennis Quaid, but it puts an enormous pressure also onto the supporting actors like John Mahoney and Joe Mantegna and Phil Bosco and people like this, because they've got to be well supported by good supporting actors.
Is that incidentally why you turn to so many fine theater people to have those supports that you could count on?
That's just because I like to work with theater people, and I like to work with good actors, because then I can do less work. It's laziness, really.
It's just, I like to see the wheels sometimes behind the effect. I like to hear the whir of the machinery. So when we watch the courtroom scenes, tell us what to look for, how you move the camera, how you're cutting. Let us in on a little trick or two that you do to keep our attention going in an otherwise static situation.
Well, it's really a movement and moving within the emotions of the scene. I mean, there's a scene when Cher is arguing with the police detective, and you start off far enough away to remind people. We have to keep reminding people that you're dealing with a man who is deaf and dumb and who is having to have everything typed out for him so that he knows exactly what's happening. And yet you don't want to keep cutting to them on separate setups all the way through a scene, because it becomes boring. So that setup starts out behind her and then slowly starts to move in as her questions get a bit more, as Cher's questions get a bit stronger. So you're left then with purely with Carl, the accused, and Cher and the other lawyer. And now as the row develops between her and the closer than that, and come round a little bit so as to remind you of the gallery behind, which is always present, the presence of the public behind.
And how ironic, the better that works, the less we notice it.
I certainly hope so.
Peter Yates, he's directed Suspect. Add a courtroom drama to the long list of multifaceted projects. I'm John Tibbetts with Peter here in Los Angeles for KCTV5.